Hey guys, welcome to SJU on Wednesday. This is not going to be where we analyze the trailer for Netflix's Sexy Beasts for 90 minutes, although we could, but might have just been discussing that. I'm Eric. We got Kim and Lon here. How's it going, guys?
Pretty good.
We are going to talk about Loki episode 3. So this is your spoiler warning. Loki episode 3 is out now on Disney Plus. You can go watch it. If you haven't seen it, you can go watch it, come back and watch this video. If you have seen it, dive in with us right now as we discuss it. Your final spoiler warning and go. All right, this was the third episode and it was called Lamentis. Talk about that title in a little bit too. It was written by Bisha K. Ali, who notably, this is her first thing for Marvel, but she's the head writer on Miss Marvel. You'll be hearing her voice a lot more coming up in the Marvel world. Guys, what is your thoughts on this third episode of Loki, which I would say is a very character-centric one?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would say that what you guys watching this won't have heard, but we had a countdown leading into this, which made me feel like I was on the Ark, waiting for that ill-fated boy. But no, funnily enough, the Ark was the name of a Doctor Who episode, and this episode reminded me a lot of Doctor Who. Yeah,
I thought of that as well.
Yeah, so Sylvie herself, the character was very much like a doctor. Particularly, probably the easiest comparison to make is with Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, with the banter, with just the way she was going about things, very Doctor Who. So
and also their relationship kind of reminded me of the Doctor and the Master when they're in episodes together, and it's like that they're both powerful. It's this rivalry, but also there's a mutual respect and fondness there.
Yeah, agreed, definitely. And it felt like this episode was from an entirely different series as well. So
yeah, that was interesting, right? Because the way they left off with the last episode, he chooses to go with her. And actually, I really like this episode, but one thing I didn't like was right out of the gate, which is I just thought it was weird when it turns out he followed her to the TVA, just because dramatically it's like, oh, they went back to where he tried to take her if he was just trying to capture her. But they only stay there for a minute. Here's the thing. I've only seen a little bit of Doctor Who. I've seen all of Eccleston and a bit of Tennant. So I don't have those comparisons as much in my mind. I know people, even when the show had trailers out, people were like, oh, is this going to have a Doctor Who vibe to it? But I definitely liked the vibe of this episode. It is a change up, and it's interesting because Hiddleston has insinuated that they're going to keep changing things up as they go, which I do respect. There's only 6 episodes, so we'll see kind of if it's too much. But I did like that this episode, kind of honed in just on these 2 characters. It's just kind of the 2 of them in a sort of buddy cop scenario. They don't get along, but they got to work together. I really liked it. Also, I wanted to see what you guys thought of this. We got a tiny glimpse of her, but obviously this is the first time we really got to see Sophia DiMartino has what we now know as Sylvie. She is taking that name. Again, a nod to the comics, even though she is a Loki variant. I've never seen her in anything, I don't think. Looking at her IMDb, she has a lot of credits. I just haven't seen her anything. I really liked her, and I thought it was, considering a lot of people I think will be introduced to her from this, it was pretty cool that it's like, wow, just sitting her with Hiddleston for the entire episode, and I think she completely held her own. What did you guys think of her?
Yeah, I agree. Who would have thought that they could follow the dynamic that they created with Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston with another character, another actor, and Tom Hiddleston, and they nailed it. She was great, and I loved their dynamic. Maybe as much as I love the Owen Wilson Tom Hiddleston dynamic.
Yeah, I really like how they're playing like shades, like variants of one another. It doesn't feel like they're playing the same character. It isn't like a doppelganger thing. And in fact, there's kind of I thought maybe even more than buddy cop, there's a little bit of like almost a doomed romance sort of vibe to some of it, especially towards the end of the episode when they start to sort of work together more. And I think that it's really interesting that, well, you would have Loki kind of fall in love with a version of himself. That's very consistent with the character. But I like how, they're coming from different places. She barely, like, what would a Loki be like who never had Frigga in his life and never got to know his his mother and never had that stability. And like, we're sort of getting to really explore the idea of being a variant through this episode, which I thought was really interesting.
I think those parallels,
yeah.
sorry, Eric, those parallels with Doctor Who are probably deliberate because
for sure.
they explore those things. Obviously, there's various versions of the Doctor and explore those things there.
I just wanted to
this episode in particular felt like purposefully like, let's send Loki on a Doctor Who style adventure. Like even just visiting a dying planet that's about to be in an apocalypse and like meeting the random people, like the lady in the cabin or whatever. Like all of these elements felt really like a nod to Doctor Who.
Yeah. I think it's a really kind of fascinating through line on this show is because now it's of course baked into the plot. She has been using these apocalypses to hide, but the fact that we are visiting these sort of doomed places in the midst of a show that is not a grim show at all, but it's a kind of interesting backdrop. And also what you were saying about the is there like a doomed romance angle? First of all, I do want to give Roth Cornet credit. She hasn't been free to do these conversations, but after she saw last week's episode, she instantly messaged me and she's like, oh my God, he's going to fall for himself because he's so narcissistic. Of course, that's like who he'd be attracted to. And I see Suze Vera, I don't know if it's Suze or Suz, sorry, in the comments asked, Phantom, do you think the variants were actually flirting or that they were just trying to manipulate each other with charisma? I think it's a little bit of both, right? I think.
Does Loki even understand that distinction is what I would say. Like for him, it's always, I'm sort of half playing you, but there's a little bit of reality and truth behind it as well. That's part of the mischief of it all.
Yeah, I think 100% they were flirting with one another and they're falling for each other. But what I'm interested in is his backstory as well, because there are hints here that he's had a doomed love affairs in the past, that he's really hurt by something. Is it going to explore that? I'd like to think so. I know that, it's obviously this episode has made canon the fact that he's a bisexual character. Be interesting, and I would love to see the show explore that further. I don't think it's going to, but
no, yeah, I think that's the most we're gonna get. But
I think that's the most we're gonna get, and it's that weird sort of baby steps thing because of man, it's taken so long, and it shouldn't have taken so long. And at the same time, we want to acknowledge like it's very cool that a leading character in the MCU, he is the title character in this show, is you can say it's a bisexual character. That's awesome. It's also like, man, it only took 13 years and a lot of vague references here and there. But I saw Kate Herron, Herron, who directs the whole series. She tweeted about that, the fact that she is bisexual. Thought it was really important to get that in. So I'm very glad she got that in there. I do also agree that's probably it for this show. But at least we can say it's not a coy reference. Like maybe this character's queer. It's like, okay.
No, it's not Cruella where they're like, but he likes dresses.
Right,
that doesn't count. That's not a thing.
Also, I saw a lot of debate online about, is it gross to ship Loki and Sylvie when they are, is it incest or a weird thing? It's weird because they're a version of each other. I also don't think anything's going to happen there, but I do think it is built in, especially because Loki is a character and he loves himself, that, yeah, of course they're being flirty and there's a kind of fun, weird vibe to it, Yeah,
it's supposed to be a little weird, but not to the point that it makes you uncomfortable.
Right,
I think it's doing a good job of skating that line.
Yep. There was, again, this was purposely, and I had no issue with this not being like a plot heavy episode. I think it was nice to kind of take this moment with him and with her, who is obviously going to be a big part of the show. The one, I think, kind of big reveal here would be the fact that the TVA is lying about the fact that all the people working there, I think, well, they've lied to the people working there who believe it, but they were not created by the timekeepers. They were at some point kind of brainwashed into to believe that, which A, I think is an interesting thing to throw in. B, I kind of like it too, because the TVA the timekeepers, I should say, seemed so powerful if they're creating life left and right.
Right.
That I think it's better to hone down what they can do. What did you think of that reveal, and what might it say about who, say, Mobius really is as we go on?
Yeah, I think it kind of aligns it with WandaVision, doesn't it? And what Wanda was doing with the people in her show. For whatever reason, they want to make that alignment. But, you know, I think all along I felt that there's something sinister about the TVA, something not right. And here we are, you know, that's pretty nefarious to do that. And at some point, I think, you know, Mobius will learn the truth and we'll find out more about his background. And I'm pretty sure he was taken from the 90s, right? And he would have had something to do with jet skis for sure. Maybe invented the jet ski.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were setting up early on that the variant was going to be the big bad. We got to catch this variant. I think after this episode, it's pretty clear that it's not Sylvie. Like, she's not going to be the main villain. She's basically an ally of Loki's at this point. So the TVA, I think, the timekeepers themselves are most likely, on some level, our big bad, and we're going to reveal that. I feel like this is the first of several like illusions that we're going to be disabused of about them. Like, I think that first episode was using some kind of power to make themselves seem far more powerful than maybe they are. And like, what do we really know about what we like? Are those definitely Infinity Stones that were in that drawer? Is everything as it's been presented to us, or is there some level of illusion that they're using to make them seem powerful? I feel like there probably are some more revelations like that to come.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember the Netflix Marvel shows, and they went to this well too many times. But a couple times it was cool. Then it became too kind of almost predictable of the like, oh, the main villain you think is not the main villain for the series as we go on. Sometimes you're like, why did you just waste Sigourney Weaver? The
Mahershala Ali, Luke Cage fake out really worked. Like, they got me on that one. I had assumed he would be our main villain.
But I do think, you know, clearly, you know, so they didn't just introduce Sylvie to not have her be here for the rest of the series. But yeah, it just seems like her goal of sort of taking down the timekeepers was already Loki's, because he just wanted to take over, because he just wanted to rule. But now you kind of feel like it will get a little deeper than, you know, what are they up to? What is their actual agenda? And, you know,
and we still don't know her motivation. I mean, we know, you know, in general that this is a bureaucratic nightmare and, you know, trying to control people, but there must be some specific impetus for her to take on this years-long project. And like, I'm sure we'll learn more about that as well.
Yeah. She was still quite cagey in this episode. She didn't reveal anything about her background when Loki was opening up to her. And although it's you know, I do believe that she's a variant of Loki, it's not certain that she is. So there could be something more to her background.
We have another thing in the AMA here. A question from Matthew McGuire asks, given that Sylvie reveals that she did love someone and that all the TVA are actually abducted variants, could her love interest be one charming, if unwitting variant with a love of jet skis? Do you think there's a Sylvie Mobius story to be told, guys?
Maybe her postman partner was a variant of Mobius.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's definitely more to unpack with the postman, and yeah, there's some personal connection. The TVA personally wronged her in some way that has led to this crusade to bring them down. And I think that's probably going to be the key to the second half of the series.
Yeah, I do think it's what you said, Kim, about the WandaVision connection is interesting, or, you know, just feeling similar, because I think that we might get here sort of, everyone kind of getting unlocked to who they really are. But unlike WandaVision, you know, those characters were not like the focus of the show at all here, because there's a smaller core group of the TVA that we're getting to know. I think that probably might be a big important thing, right? Is like who they are, where they can, not that they're all going to be like important in the history of the MCU, just more them getting to maybe return to their old life, jet skis included, right?
Yeah, I do think Ravonna Renslayer could be in on it though.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think she seems to be the one who has the most knowledge about what's going on, really, and beyond just the bureaucratic stuff. There's some kind of connection here with like the Mind Stone and controlling, enchanting people. Like, we spent a lot of time in this episode also exploring the idea that Sylvie can enchant people's minds, but Loki can't he could only do it when he had the scepter with the Mind Stone in it. Otherwise, he can't just take over your mind. And so I feel like we're going to play more into that and like the mind control ability. And is the TVA in some way, well, obviously they have some power of mind control because they're doing it to all the variants that work there. Is all of what we're seeing the result of some kind of mind manipulation tactic?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think part of it was, to have a nod to the comics, because again, Sylvie in the comics is this different character that Loki created consciously. He made her and she becomes the Enchantress. So on one hand, I think they wanted to do that nod that she enchants people, but I also agree with you that it's like that is so ingrained in what she's doing. And she talks, it's kind of like a Jedi mind trick thing of like the weaker people she can get pretty easily.
Right. And we've even seen like the opening of this episode is inside her process as she's enchanting that guard. They linger on that beat to the point that I feel like they need us to understand what she's doing to people and how it sort of functions in a practical way.
What do you guys think of that opening with Hunter C20? As we got this sort of, we kind of flashback seems a strange term and it showed that so timey-wimey. But we saw what was going on with Sylvie before we caught up with her. Did you like the kind of strangeness of this mundane, the scene that seemed so strange with two characters we barely knew at that point?
I did, yeah. But what was interesting, if you look into Sylvie Rushton's story in the comics, there's some ambiguity over how she came into being. And one story is, I believe, that Loki plucked her from Earth and controlled her mind. And it's the same story that they're using for the TVA and how they're controlling these people. And I thought it was really interesting that Sylvie points out that she had to go back hundreds of years, I think, to find a memory within the Hunter C20's mind to play out as a fantasy. So that character is X hundreds of years old. Interesting.
Well, two things. Yes, but then when we see that character in her life, it's present day. So if that's hundreds of years old, Loki's in the distant future when he's at the TVA. Again, it might not matter because they're sort of out of time, but it was interesting to hear what was clearly a 2021 setting described as the distant past from Sylvie's perspective. So she's obviously not from our point in this timeline. She's a far future Loki.
I have one big complaint about that opening sequence, guys, which is, in my experience, you only get brain freeze from like a true sort of slushy, ice creamy product, not just a margarita that is cold. She wasn't having a frozen margarita. I just don't know if I
feel like the scene as written, they were drinking frozen margaritas, and then on the day it didn't look right or read, and they had to do regular margaritas. It's probably something like that.
Well, it's a set design failure.
I'm blaming the prop department.
This is a copying Game of Thrones all over again.
I was going to say, my dad once described brain freeze as ice mind, not being able to call to mind the correct term.
And it ties to the frost giants.
Wow! I didn't think of that. I didn't think of that.
See, there's many levels here. We'll do a couple more AMA questions here, but just also want to thank everyone for watching. Thank you so much. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel for videos every weekday. Hit that like and that bell for us. Let me jump here. A couple more that we have from the comments. Another from Matthew McGuire. Spoiler question, though he hasn't appeared and may not. Could the TVA have been created by Kang to protect the timeline of his birth? Who from? Doom? I don't know about the Doom, Matthew.
That'd be a lot.
Those are the roads to Mephisto. The Kang of it all, I just want to stay with Renslayer. You just don't put her in this show, a character who's all about Kang. Like, her backstory is so tied to Kang. Clearly she'll show up down the line with him, but I also think, we're gonna get some Kang kernels here, one way or the other. He's been cast, and it's just like, it just feels like whether Jonathan Majors walks into this show or not, Renslayer, if she's a bad guy, escapes to parts unknown that could be Kangy parts. I think that there'll be some connection. What do you guys think of the Kang of all, knowing that he's, I think right now, filming Ant-Man 3?
Ant-Man,
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eric. I have nothing more to add to that. That's my thoughts exactly. I thought it from the beginning that he'd have some kind of kernel, as you say, of involvement, and I still think that will be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've seen is that they love the tease. They want to play it out. They don't want to give you the whole, you can't, Thanos doesn't just show up right away. You sort of build up to it over the course of a few movies. And so I think, yeah, at most we'll get a post-credit hint, or we get, a 3/4 from behind profile, or some kind of tease that he's coming soon in the near future. But I don't think like Jonathan Majors shows up in the final episode of this show. I think we're going to get the sort of the promise of Kangs to come.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about like we see Renslayer in a post-credit scene,
and she's heading. I don't know enough about Marvel Comics, but she's going to the place we recognize as his home, or she's on a communication with somebody who could be him, or something like that, as opposed to he's just there in the costume, like, how's it going? Catch me in Quantumania coming next year.
I am going to massacre this name because I'm a dumb American. Stijin, Stijin. But asked, did you guys feel this episode was kind of bodily for such a limited series? He points out it's 6 episodes. What did you guys think of making the decision to make this episode such a sort of contained one?
I think it was a smart decision. I like that, it's explored both of their characters, and now Tom Hiddleston has said that it's episodes 4 and 5 where things really shift gear. We're prepared for that now. Whatever, they've laid the groundwork, they've made us like Sylvie, they've revealed a few more nuggets of information that will play into the plot, and yeah, it wasn't bottly. I think it was an important episode. I think we'll find as the series goes on.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with everything Kim said. I think it was kind of bodily, but in the best way. In that when Loki's at the TVA, and I don't mean this as a knock. I really like the first 2 episodes, but it's very explainy. It's like, what's that? Who's that? What's that? Where are we going? What are you doing? What are you doing with me? How dare you? It's just like, it's constantly like he's on his heels and Owen Wilson has to set him straight, and getting him out of that environment changes up the show and makes it feel different. And I felt like he was a little bit more, not totally in control, because Sylvie could certainly hold her own, but it allowed him to be more of himself and less like constantly in the corner, like, what's going on? Don't hurt me with your stick that makes people vaporize. And so I liked it. I think getting him out of the TVA environment was really refreshing, and I liked this doomed meteor planet, and I enjoyed spending a half hour there.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think it's what the benefit of having this show, right? Because if there were a Loki movie, you wouldn't spend this much time. You'd have 1 or 2 scenes to kind of convey this, right?
Right.
And they'd have to carry a lot, Here, I was entertained the whole time. 2 great actors holding sort of, your attention. And I thought, this show is called Loki. It's not an ensemble show. Not to say there's not a supporting cast, but it's not like about a group of people. It is about Loki. And literally, of course, this is a other version of him. So it felt very appropriate. The timing of it too. It's like not like, we still have 3 episodes left. We still have the duration of a movie left, to go. So yeah, I had no qualms on the bodily nature of it. Let's see. And
John, for the record, chat's a little confused. I don't know what the commenter meant, but I don't think they necessarily meant bottle as bad or as filler. I think they just meant like it had it's
self-contained.
Yeah. Well, I think the insinuation was just, were you surprised they would do it in only a 6 episode series?
Right.
But I think because it's Loki, because it's not like the Young Avengers or something else we might get that's like very ensemble-y, I think you can take the time to do that.
Yeah, it also blew up the scale of the show, didn't it? I mean, that if it's in the same place, the moon as in the comics, it's in Kree-controlled space.
Yeah.
So and it was a beautiful looking neon lit Blade Runner type landscape, which was cool to see. So
yeah, we should mention like Lamentus 1 is a planet from Marvel. It's not been a very significant one, so you never know when they pull forward these names. It's like, did they just use it because it's a planet from the comics, or could it become very important?
Well, they did bother to show us that this is not happening until 2077. So if they wanted, they've got 50 years to send their characters there before an apocalypse happens. If they do want to use it, we could theoretically revisit.
That's right. I'll have two last questions here. One from John Lee. Do we think the TVA is in the quantum realm?
Ooh. I had not considered that, but it's a good idea.
Again, not something that occurred to me. I'm going to say, I was going to say no, and now I'm going to say yes.
Well, I think the Ancient One shows us the timeline, and there are things. Obviously, there's space outside of the timeline. Like that's where all these alternate timelines go when they get shot off. So. Presumably the TVA could be anywhere that's outside of traditional space-time, I guess you would say. But I like the idea that it's in the quantum realm. That's clever. I know there are like towns there in the quantum realm.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I came by the same reaction as you, which was at first no, and then maybe, because in the MCU they've tied quantum stuff to time travel, which isn't in the comics. That's not really an important thing. But here they made it so tied in Endgame. The fact that Kang, who's all about time travel in the comics, is being introduced in a movie called Quantumania. Yeah, I think that is a possibility.
Correct me if I'm wrong. In Ant-Man 2, when we are zooming through the quantum realm, there are stuff there. It's not
There's
just
like civilizations, people.
Yeah, it's not just like a vacuum of whatever. So like theoretically, yeah, well, you could have an office building there.
Ashley Holloway asks, did you like it's funny, I actually didn't notice this, which I actually think is a good thing. Did you like the 4-minute long take at the end? And do you want to see more cool film techniques the MCU has? They're kind of fleeing the end of the world there at the end.
I loved this. I thought this was really well done.
Yes, although it did highlight a terrible fight between Loki and a guard for me, in which he hits him with a right hook, then a left hook, and then he kicks his ankle all quite slowly and takes this guard out with a weapon. And it just, he didn't even make contact. You could see that. So that...
Magic.
That was the best. That was probably the best take they got, and they just needed to wrap.
And then he did an unnecessary spin at the end. Flashy.
He's a showman,
I dug that whole sequence, but I actually remember I didn't notice that, Kim. But I did remember thinking, I do think it's funny that these guards are like really intent on stopping these two when the world is ending. So maybe they could have had a little less of the attacky, more of the just running from the chaos. But it was a really cool sequence. So yeah, really dug it. We'll end on Ezio Hanator, who asks, thoughts on Loki's singing voice, guys?
Loved it. Drunk Loki is my favorite Loki. And I thought that he could do very well in The Witcher.
Oh yeah. I like that both WandaVision and now this one, or actually all of them, they're all these Disney Plus series, they kind of, the MCU characters get to go back to their roots. We get to revisit stuff about them from their origins that we don't think about, like Wanda speaking Sokovian or describing her outfit as Sokovian or whatever. And we learned all about the Wilson family fishing boat. And in this one, to hear Loki singing Asgardian, I'm assuming that was Asgard. I mean, it sounds, Norwegian, but I'm assuming they meant for it to be Asgardian. It's nice. It's like it ties it back to the original character. And a lot of this episode was doing that. Like, remember that he had this close relationship with his mom and he was adopted, and sort of going back to the Loki that we first met in that Thor movie long ago.
Agree with all that. Hiddleston had a lovely singing voice there. It was fun for Loki, the character. And pivoting off of what Kim said, I pronounce him Drunky. And let's hopefully we'll see him again. Guys, thanks for joining us today to talk all things Loki episode 3. We'll be back next week to talk more Loki, but we'll be back in between that as well, talk about all sorts of things, including maybe Netflix strange shows where people in animal costumes go on dates with each other.
Oh, we have to get Spencer's thoughts. Yeah, we'll definitely.
Yeah, book me on that more.
I don't care if it's a few days later. We're still going to talk about Sexy Beasts. All right, guys, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.